Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Student of the Game. I am Kyle Nash, the Student of the Game. And listen, if you're here, chances are you like talking sport, and we're glad you're doing it here with us. Listen, getting things kicked off here with NFL previews for 2024. Folks, listen, you got to bear with me. The past 3 weeks, I've talked hockey, I've talked in NBA, I've talked WNBA, I've got a lot of other directions. Heck, I even talked a bit of Olympic talk with D. Willie, Drew Willingham on the In or Out Sports Debate Show. I've been all over the place and only had minimal encounter with the NFL. Well, guess what? It's that time where we start walking through all the divisions leading up to the final prediction, the Wednesday night before the kickoff that starts it all with the Kansas City Chiefs as the defending two-time champions of the Super Bowl and the Baltimore Ravens. It only seems fitting, since the NFL is starting the season with the defending world champions, it seemed appropriate to go to the AFC West and open and kick things off there. And folks, listen, if I'm being honest with you, I'm not here to tell you that tonight's analysis with all my various people, from Booga Peters to my guy BP Brian Paul, to my man Mikey the Bernier jumping in, and even jumping across the pond to Colin Cronin with the Irish NFL show so he could talk his Broncos. All over the place, you're going to hear a lot of cool stuff. But folks, I have to tell you, everybody in here will have one thing in common, I'm going to guess, and that is that the Kansas City Chiefs are the heavy favorites to repeat this division, at the very least, as champions. And listen, as somebody who covers the Jacksonville Jaguars as often as I have, I could say as awesome as I do. I mean, both for Jaguars on SI and the Duval Dive. Bing! Shouts to my guy, John Shipley, editor of Jaguars on SI. And of course, Travis T. Holmes of Big Cat Country, my co-host on the Duval Dive. You'll see that here Fridays at 11 a.m. Eastern, obviously. But I mention that because the Jacksonville Jaguars, the team who I follow closely through those outlets, were the number 2 team in dropped passes. Number 1 being the group helmed by Patrick LaVon Mahomes II. But that's just where the stories begin. And I don't mean just for the Chiefs and having receivers that can't drive right in traffic and all sorts of this, that, and the other thing. No. The other teams are stories the likes of which would make anything in the world, as the world terms, seem absolutely boring. WWE's storylines struggle to be as entertaining as everything that is going on in the AFC West. Folks, the drama is rampant, even on the championship team, right? Then you head over to San Diego. We talk with Booga Peters about them. Sorry, not San Diego, Los Angeles. That's right. Some things are old, some things are new. The name of the team and where they are, and also their coach, right? Yeah, I know they've been in LA for a minute, but bear with me. I'm making jokes here. The punchline is this. The whole piece with Harbaugh coming in, that's going to be interesting. A lot of changes, a lot of veteran guys leaving, a lot of guys with an R designation for their experience in the NFL. A lot of stuff to walk through on that. The Raiders are an absolute dumpster fire, it would seem. But hey, Mikey the Bernier is going to come on and try to tell me in some way that Antonio Pierce might make a difference. I mean, listen, I'm all about trying to do what you do and holding pat and having confidence in your team, but I don't think avoiding drafting a quarterback to bring in Gardner Minshew was your answer, coach, though I do respect that Marvin Lewis is the assistant head coach there in Vegas to make things happen there for the Raiders. It should be an interesting, obviously, you're rebuilding their year for them, but we could talk about how they're trending up and what damage they could possibly do. And of course, I mentioned jumping across the pond to talk to Colin Cronin of the Irish NFL show to wrap up talking Broncos. I mentioned drama and soap operas, folks. You better get your organs ready and your music flowing. Whatever musical cues you want to make there. There's going to be drama galore. I talk about that with Colin Cronin. Rather, I did earlier today because there's a 6-hour time difference. He'll wrap the show. That'll go incredibly nicely, and it's a fantastic thing for all involved. But let's kick this bad boy off, folks. It's always a treat when I find this guy, get the opportunity to have him jump in the show. It's a riot. I end up laughing my entire tail off, and then I pick it up and reattach it to laugh it off again, just to talk to this guy. Of course, I mean none other than my man. You non-believers might call him Dave, but I call him Booga Peters. What's going on, my man?
What's good, brother? I'm always doing better than I deserve. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, man, listen. Listen. You could be all humble as you like. You're here for me, fool. You're here because I like you here. You may have accolades. Yeah, you used to do stuff with CBS Sports. That's cute. You're here because you're fun. All right? Listen, first and foremost. But, hey, speaking of things that are fun, we talked, man, listen, we've talked about me and my Niner fanhood, and I have made many comments on the Duval dive. Bing! About Trent Baalke ruining my life in more than one way. A, as a fan, B, doing what he can to limit the Jacksonville Jaguars making playoff games so I can't cover more NFL playoff games, okay? So I say all that to say, this is how big a deal coaching is to me. And, of course, the big coaching change taking place for the Chargers and bringing in Jim Harbaugh, man. I'm a Jim Harbaugh stan was the point of all that. Before we get you two down the line, I'm getting shouts here in the comments. My dude, Drew Willingham, jumping in, doing his thing. What's up, Drew? And Robert's jumping in. Y'all usually see him with the Duval dive, I believe. Harbaugh handed out certificates like the diplomas.
Oh.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, listen, I don't think that's true of the Chargers per se, but let's just say there's some teams in this division that'll make it a bit of a cakewalk, in my opinion. We'll talk more about that when we get to record predictions. But from your perspective, what have you seen so far? I mean, granted, it's July. We haven't seen too much, air quotes, life under a new head coach. But what have you seen? What's the biggest changes you think that have come with Coach Harbaugh?
Well, let's start by saying talk about night and day when it comes to the compare and contrast of the current head coach, Jim Harbaugh, and former head coach, Brandon Staley. I don't even like playing Madden anymore because Brandon Staley's still on the sidelines. I can't stand the guy. Wish him the best of luck in San Fran there as the defensive assistant. Kind of interesting that they didn't want to interview him or have him be the defensive coordinator there. I think it says a lot about Brandon Staley. But as far as those certificates that Harbaugh was handing out for perfect participation, saying it's like a diploma, I think, is overrating it. I think we got those for our spelling quizzes when we were in second and third grade. A lot more similar to that. But all joking aside, bringing in Jim Harbaugh, a proven winner like that, is something that Charger fans have wanted, needed, and quite frankly deserved for quite some time. Now, here I am to come rain on everybody's parade. Everyone needs to temper their expectations when it comes to the Chargers in year one of the Harbaugh experiment. I expect it to be kind of like year one equaling the Miller Lite. Great taste, less fulfilling when it comes to what they're able to produce in year one. This roster's got holes all over it. There are entire position groups that I'm incredibly nervous about. But once you have an improvement like you have, when at the head coaching spot, going from Brandon Staley, who just clearly was in over his head, to go into a proven winner like Jim Harbaugh, who won at University of San Diego, who won at Stanford, who won with the San Francisco 49ers, and with all those, and obviously we know what he just did at Michigan, winning a national championship. He didn't just win there. He took these teams that really had poor records, that really didn't deserve to be where he was about to take them, and he took them there and showed them that, hey, working hard, doing it my way, the Harbaugh way, can translate to victories. Now, he's in the NFL again to chase that ever elusive Super Bowl ring, which he was unable to get done with the San Francisco 49ers. But that being said, multiple NFC championship game appearances and one Super Bowl appearance where he lost to the Baltimore Ravens, when the power went out at, halftime and really jacked up the game. But the Harbaugh thing, I couldn't be, I'm in Michigan. I actually live just down the road from Ann Arbor. So I was really excited. And to be honest with you, the Spanos family, Dean Spanos, the owner, and I'm one of the biggest loudmouths out there talking about how cheap he used to be. But That's past tense. There was no cheap here. And, he made Joey Bosa the highest paid. at the time. He made Derwin James the highest paid safety at the time. He made Justin Herbert the highest paid in the NFL at the time. I mean, we're done with that. And then what does he do? He doesn't just bring in Jim Harbaugh. He brings in Harbaugh and all of his friends. They didn't leave anybody off. Pookie, Nuggets, all the buddies, man. He brought everybody in. And whether that's the strength and conditioning staff, Greg Roman to run the offense, Jesse Minter to run the defense. Heck, Rick Minter, his father, is there as well. All the usual suspects are here. So the expectations by everybody is that, hey, well, they're going to do what Harbaugh does and they're going to win. Slow your roll, pump the brakes. Year one is going to be tough. There are question marks as a whole over multiple position groups for this team. That being said, this is exactly what the Chargers fan wanted, needed, and deserved. Bringing in a guy like Jim Harbaugh, it's going to right a lot of things that ail you, but I think everyone needs to be really patient.
Well, and you mentioned entire position groups. Robert, in the comments, words a question that I have just the same. The wide receivers is probably one of those groups, wouldn't you say?
Well, absolutely. You know, I'm a lot higher on Josh Palmer than most people, even a lot of Charger fans. I believe that he can be a number one receiver, your ex-receiver, you know, on the line of scrimmage. He's a good enough route runner. He's not a burner, but he's crafty enough to get open, and he's got solid enough hands to be able to be relied upon. He has a solid rapport built with Justin Herbert. I like him. They used a second-round pick on Ladd McConkey out of Georgia. My son and I were up in arms at that pick because Jackson Powers Johnson was still on the board. That was a tough one. That being said, they liked Ladd enough to make him the highest paid number 34 pick out of even quarterbacks that were taken, the highest possible bonus that he could receive in that slot. So clearly they really love Ladd McConkey there. Last year's first round pick, Quentin Johnston, you know, can't catch a cold, you know, butt naked in January in Michigan weather. There was a lot of issues with him last year. Concentration drops, giving up on routes, big time drops in big games. The Green Bay game, of course, comes to mind. That being said, the guy is special after the catch. And for whatever reason, with Brandon Staley as the head coach, they just weren't putting him in the best position to succeed when it comes to, you know, get him going on some bubbles, get him going on some screens, get him on these quick hitters so he can use that yak ability. Now he proved that yak ability in a conference that doesn't know how to play defense, the Big 12. But that being said, the guy can be special when he's got his hands on the ball. You really want to see what can happen with him. And quite honestly, there's not a long leash for Quentin Johnston, despite only this being his sophomore campaign. The Harbaugh regime, they have no ties to him. He's there now, but should he continue to let the team down and not be able to step up in big moments, then he's not long for the starting lineup. You saw what they did in the seventh round. They drafted two wide receivers, Harbaugh's guy out of Michigan, Cornelius Johnson, and then Jerry Rice's son, Brendan Rice, out of USC. A lot of Charger fans out there have really high hopes for Brendan Rice in year one. Again, patience, temper your expectations. I'm not saying that he'll be a practice squad member, but how many receivers are they going to keep? You know, six, maybe seven. Cornelius Johnson and Brendan Rice could be the odd man looking out, or odd man out, so to speak, the last guy looking in. And they may not even make the roster. They're not locks for sure. Cornelius might stick to the practice squad. I feel like because of his size, Brendan Rice would get snatched up by another team and put on their 53 if in fact he was an addition to the practice squad. But to wrap up the wide receiving core, you just went from Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, not to mention you're losing a Gerald Everett at tight end. And though he was a terrible running back and the wheels have fallen off, Austin Eckler was still a solid receiving threat out of the backfield. The receiving core definitely has some of the biggest question marks surrounding it at this time, for sure, going into this campaign.
That being said, and I say this as a Harbaugh guy, there's something here in the comments too. Robert mentions, 3 years to build. I like him calling Harbaugh hardball. I'm not going to adopt that, but Robert, you keep doing that. I like that. Here's the thing. Anybody that isn't Man Campbell in Detroit, I'm intimidated to say is tough, just because I don't want to get a call from Detroit. I'm kidding. But yeah,
Right.
Listen, I like everything you're saying about the receiver core. It's not anything I think that's a shock per se. In the comments, you got somebody here. You got Robert again talking about how McConkey's going to ball out. I like how you mentioned Palmer in there. He did some nice things. I don't know if I'm quite as excited as you, but I think anybody in that situation is a nice weapon. Of course, I'm going to enjoy Jerry Rice's son as a 49ers stan. However, I'm more intrigued by what they brought in. I love Joey Alt at tackle being the draft pick. Listen, he's not from Michigan, but that's a Harbaugh move if I've seen one. Get some beef on there, it's what's for dinner, and especially that because that's how you're going to eat if you're in a Harbaugh offense. John, Jim, whoever. I forget their dad's name, George, whatever. If it's a Harbaugh,
Jack.
Thank you, Jack. That's right. Whoever it is, the only other guy more or that might be as likely to run the ball is a Shanahan, but then Kyle is effing up that rotation by, throwing anybody at quarterback and replacing them immediately. Brock Purdy, man, I don't get it. Anyways, wrong West. Let's stick with the AFC. Bringing in J.K. Dobbins and the guys that Gus Edwards that are going to come in at the running back position. I feel like, and don't cringe when I say this, but the last time I heard somebody preach, don't have your expectations too high, temper your expectations. This team has no real wide receiver threat. They ended up winning a playoff game against your Chargers, an amazing game. That is entirely what I say. I'm not saying it to rub it in. This is meant to be hopeful. All I heard in that offseason leading up to that playoff game were those things. And I might add, I'm more excited about your offensive line than I was that one for sure, right? And listen, Stokely may have been bad, but my dude was not Urban Meyer, okay? So, you got that going for you. By the way, let me throw in Drew Willingham's sentiment too, because he agreed with me. Brandon Staley equals trash. I feel like I listen, I tried to convince you last year, but you were being the good Charger fan and holding on. I'm glad to see you come over to the dark side, and I will go true Lucifer Morningstar and tell you, I tried to tell you, but you wouldn't listen. And I only drive that home because he's a defensive coach that couldn't get his damn team to play defense. However, I know we're tempering expectations, but man, you got to give a little credit to this group putting this much of a team together with the cap hell tied to Bosa and Max contracts. I'm a little surprised they kept them both in the building. Where do you sit on where this defense is? Because if I'm honest, all the talk we just had about wide receiver is fair. This defense, I have zero confidence in.
I didn't quite expect you to go quite to the zero confidence. So, I mean, I love the edge rushers, but, sure. to answer your question about the cap hell, what Joe Ortiz did is quite just barely short of a miracle, the way that he reworked things. Going into it, it felt like Keenan Allen was the one they were going to keep for sure. I mean, maybe I did, or maybe I didn't have a lot of money placed on how that would go. And my pocketbook came up a little short, a little bit short in that one. But that being said, in a Jesse Minter defense, you got dogs that can get after the quarterback. Yeah. They're so multiple in the way that they blitz, the way that they stunt. Having that four-headed horseman, so to speak, with Mack especially, who just, it doesn't matter how old he is. Khalil Mack, just a different thing. I'm fairly certain he's an alien. Joey Bosa, when healthy, can get it done, but when was the last time he was healthy? Tuli Pelotu, he's an up-and-coming rusher who I really think is going to be somebody in this league. That being said, these Charger podcasters and such, they're way too rah-rah for Tuli. He started off hot last year, but once teams got more tape on him, like a lot of teams do, they're going to start to figure out what he does well.
And let me add this real quick to guys like that too, right? This is the Usi Umenyiora effect, right? The guy on the other side, when the star leaves, starts to deteriorate. I think it's more of that. And that doesn't mean he's bad by any means, Booga. I'm not saying that. But now, when they ain't got to worry about Joey, they can concentrate on you more. Use that tape to their advantage even further, right? So I want to hit that home real quick. Go ahead.
No, absolutely. But I was just going to talk about the addition of Bud Dupree as well. I mean, Bud Dupree is no slouch. They didn't give him, old man's salary number. He got a decent contract to sign with the Chargers to be a fourth rusher. So these guys are going to be rotating in. For the Harbaugh plan and the hardball plan, if you will, it's a lot of ugly type money being spent. small contracts. It's a Ben Mason on a 1-year deal around league minimum. It's a Will Disley as a blocking tight end, so they can finally, for the first time in a very long time, have a guy in at tight end who can really, really control that C. And there are, as Joe Ortiz mentioned, there aren't a lot of tight ends that can firmly control the C, and he does that down in and down out. It takes J.K. Dobbins on a friendly contract. It takes a Gus Edwards willing to prove that he can get it done with a different uniform on and be more of that bell cow type running back. It takes bringing in guys like Christian Fulton on defense, who, though they've had rough years, and last year his tape is a really hard watch. I mean, it's really bad. That being said, the Titans defensively were an absolute dumpster fire last year. Mm-hmm. He has come out and said, he felt like he wasn't being used properly. I don't know how much stock I put into a statement like that once you leave a team kind of rapping on him. But I can agree with him that the Tennessee defense was an absolute mess last year. But it takes a lot of these small signings of these guys that are your junkyard dog guys that are willing to do the things that aren't the glorified things in the NFL. Literally to go an entire game just blocking, that you're not going to show up on the stat sheet any other way. Make no mistake about it. They're going to run the football. And when they're done running the football, they're going to run the football. And when you think they're done with that, they're going to run the football some more. You're going to see a lot of punting situations. J.K. Scott's going to get his leg worked out. The Harbaugh regime, they don't view a punt as a bad thing, or in the way that a lot of other teams do. It's just the opportunity for the defense to step up.
Right.
Harbaugh got his guy, Junior Colson, in the draft in the 3rd round. I didn't think he'd still be there. In a miracle of its own, he was there. I mean, the way that Ortiz navigated the salary cap hell that they were in, brought in all these Harbaugh guys, still has a big chunk of change to maybe make a trade acquisition near the trade deadline this year, because the Chargers have plenty of salary cap room at this point. Kudos to him. Now, to see how it all plays out, that's why we're here talking about it, because the games aren't here yet. When they get here, we'll all be able to just say how each game did or did not go as far as in favor of the new Harbaugh plan.
And you did clear. Let me clarify something too, because listen, there's a list of talented guys, and I don't want to just dismiss out of hand Joey Bosa just because he's not Nick Bosa in a 49er uniform. I don't want to portray that. I don't want to portray that I have any problem with Bud Dupree or anything else, any former Titan for that matter, where Jeffrey Simmons was the only real big name on there that I had any respect for. I don't know what it is with defensive tackles in the AFC South, but damn, I'm just saying. So with all that being said, I where I lack confidence isn't necessarily the talent. But Booga, this is a marathon, not a sprint. For one game, that Chargers defense might be dangerous. And heck, I have you winning your opening contest. Do I think yeah, exactly. Do I think you'll last more snaps as a defense than Aaron Charles Rodgers last season? Absolutely. But down the stretch, when you're in a division where you're playing Patrick Mahomes II twice, where you're doing battle with the toughest and arguably the best, I'm not saying arguably, the best division in the NFL in the AFC North, I start to get worried, especially for teams that are notorious, leaving you in pain the following week. Ironically, another Harbaugh coaches in one of them humpy bumpies. That's fascinating. I'm already looking forward to watching. I don't care. So, with all that in mind, I wanted to know where that's coming from. I'm not saying you don't have moments. I'm not saying that this is a bad defense, air quotes, per se, but this is a defense, to your point, that's going to get a lot of wear and tear because you are in a Harbaugh system, because you're going to see a lot of punts, hopefully not threes and out. But, yeah, that's not a great mix for me at the end of the day. Like I said, though, I do like how they upgraded the line to have the running game be effective. We'll see how much of a magician he is with his offensive staff, Harbaugh, calling running plays and getting things to work. And, hey, I should hope on occasion you use this arm cannon you have in the backfield to get a little damn play action in there, because you're going to fool the bejesus out of somebody. The way that it's okay to suddenly bang on Justin Herbert, like the way it used to be cool to bang on young Peyton Manning, which everybody has seemed to have since forgotten somehow, happened.
Oh, yeah.
I was there for that, all you trash talkers. You know what I'm talking about, Booga.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of the space where I'm coming from. it is more the marathon, not sprint. And I think you tell me what you think of this thought that 2025, that off seasons where we're going to see that side of the ball really get rebuilt as contracts start to get cleared and things like that.
So I'm not a patient person. And I do remember on your show last year saying, I think the Chargers will finish 10-7, 9-8, but sneak into the playoffs. I didn't expect them to completely shit the bed, all the beds, the whole hospital of beds. No,
the entire hotel of beds.
I mean, all of the beds, the world's worth of beds. I didn't expect that. But looking at this team and their salary cap situation, yeah, they have a little bit of room. But next year, we're talking triple-digit millions of dollars, over $100 million available. And for the Chargers and free agency, you're going to see them be aggressive and go after some Harbaugh-type guys. They're going to – I mean, you have to spend a certain amount that's allocated to you of the salary cap. There are some more Michigan pieces that I'm sure they'd love to add, like a Mason Graham on the defensive line that you followed that tweet up right away. Yeah, his feet are asinine. A man that size should not be like Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly back there. For you young folks, it just means they got great feet and they can dance. He shouldn't be able to do that, but he does it and he makes it look easy. You got Will Johnson, the cornerback there. He's arguably one of the top 5 players in the entire country. I'm sure Harbaugh and company would like to reunite with him. It's not just the free agency. It's the draft has some exciting players as well that actually there are strengths to that next draft class that you didn't see a lot of this year's draft class. Had the Chargers not gotten Junior Colson at linebacker, this is a terrible draft class for linebackers overall. Peyton Wilson, I mean, I know everybody likes him, but how healthy is he going to be? He hasn't proven to stay healthy. Why would we expect him to in the big boy league? But yeah, the next year for sure, I will have my patience tested just like every day, but especially during the 2024 season, I'm very much looking forward to year 2. And I know Robert in the comments had said the hardball thing is a 3-year build. Sure it is. But if you're, that one right there, it takes 3 years to build a hardball team. That being said, if he has a crusty year 2, and similar to what I expect them to have in year 1, patience is going to start to wane. The Spanos family, listen, just because they're spending money doesn't mean they just want to throw it out the window. So going into year 3, if they don't have a playoff game under their belt, there's going to be more yakety yak about Justin Herbert not being clutch, and the pressure will be on the front office and the ownership group to figure out how to get this team going. The patience may start to run out then. And I know that it's hard to say that about a proven winner like Harbaugh, but we watch great college coaches come to the NFL all the time. The NFL is quite a bit different than when Harbaugh was in it. And that's not a slight towards the man. Who am I to try to knock a proven winner at every organization he's been with? I mean, far be it from me to do so. But what I am saying is if we're going into year 3 and we're still like, oh, this is the year, like, I don't know that bodes well for the Harbaugh experiment. That being said, get this year out of the way, if you will. Kind of fast forward into next year's offseason and the draft. They have real money to spend to really lock down some of these key players that would have made great additions, especially to this defense. I mean, we talked about the wide receiver room. We didn't talk about how skeptical I am of the running back room on offense, but you look on defense, the cornerback room. Speaking of a game against the Jacksonville Jaguars, everybody loved that Asante Samuel Jr. had 3 picks in the first half. But what did he do? He disappeared like he does in second halves of games. He can't tackle to save anybody's life. And what's he supposed to do? Play nickel in a Jesse Minter defense? Ew. I mean, your nickel in a Minter defense has got to be a hard-nosed dude who comes downhill and is going to hit you in the mouth. That's just not Zont's game. That's not what he's great at. And when it comes to experienced route runners, Asante Samuel Jr. versus Devontae Adams is one of the ugliest matchups I've ever seen. I mean, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. So the cornerback group, yikes. The interior defensive line group is bare bones. I mean, Poona Ford, I'm excited to see him, but can you rely on him for 3 downs a series? I don't think that he's a 3-down guy. Scott Matlock 2 years ago was a 6th-round pick. Like the guy, but he'd have to show some vast improvement to really make an impact on the interior. yes, you've got I love the edge rushing group. I love Bosa, or excuse me, I love Mack. I like Bosa. I'm excited about the addition of Bud Dupree, and I'm really looking forward to Tuli Pelotu growing into his sophomore campaign and proving that the first 7 weeks of last year is more about, or more kind of the level of play that we should expect from him, as opposed to the last half of the season where he would kind of disappear during games. And yeah, Bosa was out, so teams could double team Mack, which they did, but Khalil Mack still had 17 sacks at 32 years old.
That's
Again, the dude's not of this world. It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. And he's just built like an Adonis. I mean, the dude, he's probably, the strongest guy on the team and one of the most athletic, despite his age. He'll be 33 during this season. And then the safety group is great at the top too. Derwin James and for fans that aren't familiar with Alohi Gilman, he's an up-and-coming star in this league. Now, is he quite as good as some of these podcasters and Chargers fans believe he is? He's not there yet, but he's somebody that you can help build around. But they brought in Tony Jefferson. Tony Jefferson hasn't been healthy since my kids were in single digits. So, I mean, my daughter's 15 and my son's 13. I mean, it's been a minute. And he was a scouting intern with the Ravens last year. So they bring him in a team-friendly deal. He's not getting paid a ton, so it's great. But where's that safety 3 at? To make Derwin play at his best, number one, you don't ask him to do everything like Staley did. You put him in the best position, which is usually closer to the line of scrimmage, allowing him to kind of play more off-ball linebacker, match up on your tight ends like a Travis Kelce and just say, this is your assignment the whole game, and not move him around and give him 85 different responsibilities every play. To do that, you need another safety to play back there with Alohi Gilman. So,
I mean, you mentioned the corner struggling, and you got to have Gilman step up. I mean, listen, it's the difference between him and Andre Cisco in Jacksonville is Cisco got some help, and that'll be a whole interesting conversation that Travis and I will have either in the AFC South preview on this podcast or on the Duval Dive, bing, at some point. I just don't know when. But yeah, listen, hey, he's great if he doesn't have to do everything. I got bad news for you, Booga. I think you got at least one more season of that. But I am listen, I am definitely pro Derwin James. And listen, you're touching on other reasons for my lack of confidence in this defense better than I did earlier. So I'll leave you with that. But listen, having a lot of fun. I got BP in the green room ready to jump in for the next segment. But before we have him do that, I'm going to need that record prediction, man. Where are you at?
So it's so easy to sit here and do what I'm about to do. And that's to temper my expectations. And maybe in a way I'm protecting my old heart so the damn thing doesn't try to fail on me again.
Yeah.
But I see 9 wins tops. I see a 9-8 team. I don't know how you sneak into the AFC playoffs at 9-8. I don't know that you could. You talked about the AFC North earlier. I mean, all 4 teams are going to be a pain in the ass for everybody that's on their schedule. The AFC West has the AFC North on their schedule this year. I would love to see the Chargers really make some noise, get into the playoffs and win a damn game so people could quit trying to drudge up the weirdest shit to rap on Justin Herbert. Because, my God, I don't understand how you can watch 4 minutes of that man play football and not understand and realize he's a top 5, top 7 in his sleep in this league. All these, he's not clutch, he's not this. And Scott Kazmar on Twitter, and I hope I'm not butchering his name. I don't even follow the guy, but he's popped up all over my feed the last few days. And all he's done is proven over and over again by showing the factual stats out there regarding why Justin Herbert isn't the problem and why maybe a lackluster Joe Lombardi offense and then a not ready for the dance head coach and Brandon Staley were holding him back more. Justin Herbert is going to go into his 4th system in the last 4 years. In college, he did 3 systems. I mean, the guy, he's going 7 systems in 8 years. I mean, it's hard for anybody to learn that kind of shit. But the deal is, Justin Herbert's an incredibly smart guy. He's a savvy guy. I just don't know with the question mark. Bradley Bozeman, they brought him in at center. Sure, he's a good run blocker, but he was one of the worst graded centers in the entire NFL in pass blocking. Now, they're going to run the damn ball, so thank goodness he's above average at that. But Trey Pipkins, they're moving over from right tackle to right guard. Trey's never played right guard before. Joe Alt, though I was ecstatic with the pick, I was ready for it. I was told all offseason that he would be the guy that they were going to take at 5, but he's never played right tackle before, so they're going to take their lumps there. It's 9-8, and wouldn't at all be surprised with an 8-9 season with the Chargers winning a couple games that nobody picks them to win and hanging around a lot. But I just don't think there's enough firepower. There aren't enough weapons, like formidable weapons on this team to make an impact at year one. It's a 9-8 at best record for me.
Shouts to Robert making an interesting point here. The Herbert's O-line is almost as bad as the Jags. At least the Chargers could get a yard up the middle. Listen, they both have addressed the center position. I like that you bring that up. Damn the pass, full run ahead, true Harbaugh football. Not necessarily the flashiest thing for an LA crowd, but hey, I'll put it this way. If the Chargers do what I see, they may perhaps be able to use the DJ Khaled defense. And let me be honest, I'm a little surprised that I got what I got with 10 wins. The AFC North sucks, is great, rather. It sucks to play them, is what I should say.
Yeah.
However, you also have the NFC South, the outright hands down worst division in the league. You're going to go 3-1 in there. So those two balance out. Just on that alone, that puts you at 7 wins by my count. And then you also have the Cards, Titans, and Pats. You're getting 2 of those, buddy. You're getting 2 of those. So for that math puts me at 10. So I could say what I said about the defense, but when you're playing the Pats, the Cardinals, and then the mayonnaise messiah in Tennessee, I mean, you can see why I feel like I'm going to squeeze out a few. That could even be a 3-0 rather than just a 2-1. But I also had to factor, as the great Maurice Jones-Drew put it, sometimes Charger's going to Charger. One of those 3 will be that game. You know what I'm talking about, Booga. I'm trying to rub it in.
Don't sleep on the Cardinals. If Kyler's healthy, I mean, they've got some solid weapons. They revamped the offensive line to a degree. I don't know a lot about their defense. I'm not real fond of their defense. But that being said, I don't think the Cardinals are a gimme this year.
Well, hey, and maybe that's the one. That's the one in question. But again, the key element, much like Joey Bosa, if he's healthy, that's a big if. I'm not saying he's Kevin Durant injury risk bad, but it's a concern. I'm just saying. Anyways, Booga, man, great to catch up, dude. Hey, your team needs to do something, so we do this more than once a year. How about that?
You're telling me, man. I've been at this thing for almost 5 decades. I would love for them to do something. My father didn't get to see him win a Super Bowl. I hope to not suffer the same fate, if you will. Thanks for having me on. I hope they do something. You can invite me back whenever you'd like. We can talk any team, and I'm more than pleased to do so. It's an honor. Thanks for having me on, brother.
Hey, fair enough. Tell them where you can be found, Bolt Father.
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Threads at Booga Peters, BOOGAPETERS. And I'm also the Chargers media caster for the Pro Sports Fans app. So you can find me there. Thank you, everybody, for tuning into this Chargers segment. And all the Charger fans out there, go ahead and rain in my comments. I'm ready for you.
He's calling for the ads. An honor, joy, and privilege, man. Good to see you, Booga. We'll catch you next time, brother.
See you, brother. Bye-bye.
Well, hey, listen, the right share of optimism and pessimism all in one Charger-loving man right there. You can't front on Booga coming in. Good friend of mine. But speaking of good friends of mine, I don't have to go all the way up to Michigan. I just have to drive a little bit up the road to the shores of the St. John's, my cohort with A7BN Sports, and just a downright good American. BP Brian Paul's in the building. What's going on, my guy?
That's Master BP to you, sir. Thank you very much. Booga Peters, I love that man. I love listening to him every year talk about the Chargers and then disappearing after that because Kansas City does what they do.
I knew that was coming. Yeah. Hey, listen.
Yeah. Anyway, hi, everybody.
Yeah, I think that's part of the joy for you coming on the reviews is you do get to hear Booga say fun things for a while. That's fair. I can't front on that.
Yes. Yes, he has wonderful things to say. Very informed fan that he is, but unfortunately, I even busted out the jersey tonight, Kyle. Are we serious? This is my legacy from Uncle Paulie before he passed away. One of the things that he gifted me was the 100th season Super Bowl jersey for the Chiefs that year. So rest in power, Uncle Paulie and Dr. Jerome. But nonetheless, dude, it's always a pleasure to be with you here from the shores of the St. John's to the confines of the Cool Mo here on the Student of the Game podcast. Also streaming live tonight on A7BN Sports Instagram. Ding, because I slipped that underneath the rug while you weren't looking.
Oh no, but I noticed it. You just beat me to the promo like a good radio man as yourself should. But listen, man, let's jump right into it. I don't have a lot of doubts overall about the Chiefs. I have had intros throughout the offseason that are, everybody's telling me this team had a great offseason, and the Bears did, and this team had a great offseason. And the Jaguars offseason is better than a lot of people think it was. Fine, you can go all this through. We're not talking enough about what the Chiefs did this offseason. Like, I know the media is kind of a car accident, but not everything in the Chiefs offseason was an absolute abject disaster. There was a lot of positive, retaining Chris Jones and basically putting a team back on the field, drafting Xavier. One might say that their offseason was worthy. Anyways, do you feel like the Chiefs' performance in the offseason this year has gotten enough? Yes, sir.
Yeah, to start running now. Start running now, Nash. Anyway, no, I would agree. It has been somewhat of a comical offseason for the Chiefs. Somebody needs to revoke Rashee Rice's. Wow, I'm so stunned by that. Maybe I have a little too much to drink too. Rashee Rice, he needs to. Yeah, he needs to not be behind the wheel of a car anytime soon. Let's say that much. That kind of distraction is not what a defending Super Bowl champion really needs right now. They don't really need a lot of that, especially since you have a tight end who you managed to sign back again. Thank you, Jesus. Travis Kelce is still a Chief. But you have all of that press surrounding him and his very famous girlfriend, too. So there has been enough of a circus in Chiefs Nation right now, or Chiefs Kingdom, as we call it, to go around to have Rashee Rice getting in trouble with the law, which suspension pending.
I'm air quoting the hell out
right
of that.
Now.
No, suspension pending.
I don't see him getting suspended this season, honestly. I think Roger. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Who knows at this point? But other than that, I think there was plenty of success in the offseason for the Chiefs, despite the circus. Xavier Worthy getting signed was a big deal. Adding him to the receiver room, if Kadarius Toney could stay on sides and catch a few passes, that's going to add quite a bit with Mecole Hardman and Rashee Rice if he does get to play this season, which I'm sure he will. So it's not the Legion of Zoom as we knew it when we had the cheetah running down the field, who is running in a Dolphins uniform these days. But, I honestly think this is another reloaded season. And, the biggest question that I have is, can Patrick LeVon Mahomes II do what he does yet again and, have another near 5,000 yard season? The guy chucked the ball for 4,183 yards. Can we get to 5K this year? Who knows? Will he be the MVP again this year, either Super Bowl or regular season? Who knows? Where do you go from here if you're a Chiefs fan? The only place to go is up or down, but we don't want to go down, obviously, because that's not where the Hunt family has invested their money. So, we got to keep going. We got to keep winning. That's the thing. But we have to do it in a way that was maybe not as gut-wrenching, maybe not as stressful in the cardiovascular system. There was a couple of games last year that had everybody spinning. Of course, we'll break down the schedule in a minute, but I'm optimistic. And, if we can clear out some of the distractions and maybe keep Taylor Swift down to 2 games this season instead of most of them, I think we'll be all right and we'll be on track because our schedule really is favorable this year, to be truthful.
Well, let me lead with this. Say what you will about the distraction that won. Let's put it this way: how swiftly the media gets distracted in matters of Travis Kelce's fiance, girlfriend, whatever she is. But if they're focused on her, they're not focused on car accidents, domestic violence allegations, what have you. So I think there's that positive that's being leveraged well by one Andy Reid. At this rate, I'm going to need to learn his middle name. This is getting crazy. But with all that being said, I mean, I think the big question is, you mentioned the favorable schedule. We mentioned some of the identity changes. What is some of the, what when you're on the field, what is the most scary thing if you're a Chiefs fan, other than obviously Patrick Mahomes getting injured, or anybody for that matter getting injured? Because the thing is, you do still have a first place schedule. There are some tough matchups in there, including a rematch against the 49ers at Levi, so those are all things that are on there. I'll put it this way. Did the lineup improve enough to take that cardiac arrest out of the schedule? Because let's be clear, as a guy who has made the statement that the Jags had a chance to take them out in week 2 in Everbank, they just shot themselves in the foot a few more times than the Chiefs did, right? Have they done enough to put the safety on the weapon to exclude gunshots to the metatarsals?
I think we'll find out in week 2, believe it or not. You open up against Baltimore. Hello, they're pissed. Mm-hmm. I mean, just a little bit. Because they very well could be in the Super Bowl and not Kansas. Then you have to play Cincinnati at home, who has also been a pain in your neck in Arrowhead. Joe Burrow, if he actually gets healthy this season, the Bengals may run a table and be in the playoffs yet again. So I think we'll find out by week 2. And I have always said this as a loyal Chiefs fan and true. Steve Spagnuolo's defense has not convinced me that it is not Swiss cheese. And I just am not convinced that the track meet is the way to go anymore. Yes, you have that high-powered offense. Yes, you have that potential. I mean, Kelsey almost got 1,000 yards in the regular season. Rashee Rice got 1,000 yards damn near in the regular season. You had Isaiah Pacheco almost run for 1,000 yards. I mean, we're not talking about an unproductive offense, but an unproductive offense is only as good as a productive defense. And Spags' defense has not proven to me, with the likes of playing Josh Allen in the regular season, playing Cincinnati in the regular season in past years, that they can stop an offense when it's potent. And they are usually potent in the regular season late and in the postseason. And just look at the scores of the games that they won. They're not exactly dominating opponents like they used to. We always talk about the Chiefs being this dominant team right now, this dynastic franchise. But defensively speaking, they're still very weak. And they give up quite a few points. Now, they play defense in the right places and get the stops that they need, but a little bit more consistency out of Spagnuolo's defense will probably give Patrick a little bit more breathing room, because the offense has had its sputters, and there are some games last season that honestly Kansas City should have won that they lost, and a lot of it had to do with Kadarius Toney being offsides. I mean, mistakes that they made mentally at the line of scrimmage, details that they needed to function on. The defense has got to play better, period, end of subject. The offensive side of the ball, I'm not worried about right now. The wide receiver room, fantastic. The tight end, you've got that on lockdown. You've had it for a while. If Patrick Mahomes goes down, well, Carson Wentz isn't exactly a bad backup. He hasn't had the spotlight as much, but he's not a bad backup to have in the event that Patrick gets an ankle rolled, which may happen again. I mean, the dude has had some fragility in the ankle department for a while. He's probably got more arthritis in his ankles than I do in both of my knees right now. So I feel his pain. But
I'll add this too to the whole Patrick.
The Carson Wentz can back him up, So, but you're still playing Niners.
Yeah, no, and listen. Well, first of all, it's interesting. The stat I hear about the 49ers is not so much their record, which is amazing. Let's be clear. It's how often teams lose after playing the 49ers because they got their asses so entirely kicked. And I think that in that time, the schedule where it is particular to the Chiefs is a big factor. Hey, if Chad Henne could do it, why the hell can't Carson Wentz? I'm in 100% agreement with you on that particular front. And I'll say this about Spags' defense. I'm not a Spags guy ever, never have been, never. I think he's definitely one in the overrated category. But dudes like Chris Jones can hide the bejesus out of your flaws in coaching. If from moment one, Brock Purdy has a dude in his face, that's the reason why he missed that touchdown pass. That was the difference in the game. And no, I'm not referring to freak accidents like Christian McCaffrey fumbling on the first drive or that punt return. I'm not a bitter fan like that. Ish happens in Super Bowls, in football, in general. It still went to damn overtime with that going on. The difference made, in my opinion, was Chris Jones bearing down on Brock Purdy on one particular play and where he just missed a touchdown pass. And I ain't even mad at it. How am I going to get mad at Chris Jones being Chris Jones? How am I going to get mad at Travis Michael Kelce being Travis Michael Kelce? And how am I going to get mad at Patrick LeBron Mahomes II? You don't do it. You just appreciate because it's damn fine football. If I got to lose, it's within the last minute of overtime in the goddamn Super Bowl. I'm okay with that. But my sermon aside, hail Buccaneers. With all that being said, man, listen, I see where you're going with a lot of that. It's funny. You mentioned the Chiefs not being as dominant. I think that's an identity change personally, because the funny thing about it is I've made the statement that the Chiefs are a defensive team, and I did it last year. And that key element of getting the stops at the right time, playing situational football. Say what you will about Spags' schemes, perhaps, but this team, these guys, this culture is smart football players. I don't mean to evoke the evil empire, cue the dan, 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 but there are elements where I feel like if Bill Belichick is Darth Hoodie, then Andy Reid needs to start getting fitted to be a Grand Moff Tarkin, okay? That's all I'm saying. Like, there's so much intelligence in situational football with this group. You see where I'm going. And by the way, what usually happened when Reid played Belichick, Reid entirely pantsed him. And who's the one guy in the original Star Wars? Lord Vader, stop it, right? I'm just saying, somebody had to give Darth Vader orders. It wasn't always the Emperor. Grand Moff Tarkin had to die in the explosion, and I'm not looking for Andy Reid's career to die anytime soon, so please don't shoot the Death Star yet. That's all I'm saying. When did they paint it red? Anyways, go ahead. Take me to your playoff your record. Yeah.
So I think this is a solid 13-4 this year. It's definitely the Chiefs that we know, but I think, the first game of the season is already a test. You're playing at prime time on Thursday night in Baltimore or against Baltimore, and Lamar Jackson shines brightest when the lights are the brightest. So that's already a test. And then you go, a second home game against Cincinnati, and that's always been a pain in the neck. And then you go to that game in San Francisco. Now, I'm not calling the Vegas game a trap game or anything, but I'm calling it a trap game because for the reasons you mentioned, San Francisco on the road at Levi's, and then they go to Vegas. They spend a little bit of time out there in California and Nevada, and the Niners are going to give them their best shot. They're pissed about that Super Bowl. They're pissed about both of them. So they're going to give them their best shot at this point. And then you got to go play Vegas with whatever wounds you have to lick at that point. So the first 5-6 games of the season are going to be rough, but I honestly think the Chiefs will get the better of it. I think it's a 13-4 season. They have an extremely favorable schedule. See West, sorry, Booga. They're going to bust through the Chargers. The Chargers are going to find a way to Los Angeles themselves, and that'll be the end of it. Harbaugh's going to hardball. Both Harbaughs will eventually hardball. I think they will go 2-0 against the Harbaugh brothers this season, or 3-0 rather. So do play, the Chargers to sweep. And, that's it. But then you have to play the likes of Denver, who has been all over the place, Carolina, who has been the bottom of the heap, the Browns, who are up, down, left, right, BA somewhere. And, I think the test later in the season for the Chiefs will be Pittsburgh, because they're playing that Pittsburgh Williams at home. The line in week 17. So they may be playing a lot for that, and they'll be giving the Chiefs their best shot. But 13-4, division champions. And will they get that first round bye this season? I will put a question mark on that one. I think it's going to be a race between them and Baltimore again, to be honest with you. And the Ravens may get the better of that deal one more time. But as we learned last season, it doesn't matter who's first. It matters who has the ring on that finger.
Yeah, the Texans are adorable. I don't think they're ready to be number one seeds just yet. I am going to watch that game quite closely. But that's one of the ones that I definitely give to the Chiefs. I mean, for me, listen, we are two minds who are thinking alike here. I do have the Chargers going 4-2, but much like in the game of craps, you can roll things the hard way. They're going to get swept by the Chiefs and then win the other four the hard way by sweeping the other two teams. So, yeah, I mean, that's just where I sit with the Chargers on that particular front. I don't normally do this, but I do have the Chiefs 6-0 in the division. The only thing that I might be a threat at is week 18 against the Broncos. But I feel like Carson Wentz can win that game because they probably won't need it by then. I, too, have 13-4. I got the Baltimore game and the Niner game marked down as losses just for the reason you mean with the psychology, but I think you'll agree that both of those could just as easily be overtime wins for KC as well. I'm just not in the habit of giving teams an undefeated season. That's basically the main reason I picked those two. The part that I had the biggest trouble doing is saying 3-1 against the NFC South, but there always seems to be that one game where the Chiefs go out and look nothing like the damn Chiefs. Like, you've lost to the Colts in the past in such a fashion. That's all I'm saying. Okay. So,
yeah.
Long of the short, the other bonus games on the schedule, you cited them. The only one I see you losing is the Niners, right? Because you're going to be playing the Texans. I mentioned, I think you win that one. And then it's the Bills. The Bills are worse than they've been, and you would beat them before. I think the Chiefs themselves are going to be mad that Josh Allen got to sneak away from that one the way that it did. One might even say it might be a penalty for what happened last time. So, with all that in mind, yeah, I got 13-4. I just got there a different way than you, my dude. So, just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit. Just a little bit.
So, but hey, with that in mind, it's a good time to have you. Tell the world where you can be found, my dude. Uh-oh. This is the part where I need to hear you, BP. So, yeah, you can find him on the shores of the St. John's every day on the Captain and Company morning show during the sports report. And, of course, A7BN Sports or something like that. Yeah. I don't know all your others and socials and stuff off the top of your head.
And my internet has been really wonky tonight. I am so sorry.
Let's try that again. So, where can you be found, BP?
Yeah, with a little bit less suck this time. Anyway, you can find me on FSB, Florida Sports Broadcast, and I also chair A7BN Sports, where I do the sports wrap every day on Captain and Company in the morning. I cannot wait for football season. In the meantime, Canadian football will keep me appeased until August. Other than that, I'm coming back for the Cup. Yeah, I never sent it to him. It's still sitting behind me. It's taunting me, but that's motivation for next year, I will have the Uncle Paulie Memorial Cup in my office yet again.
Whatever. I'm still the guy that won it first.
Yeah, and that sucked. Anyway, I said something funny, but we'll skip it.
BP, you be cool, my guy. All right. Brian Paul doing his thing. But listen, as great as Brian Paul is, I'm going to change the level. I'm going to light this thing on fire with my favorite degenerate, Mike Bernier, the Burn of the Huddle Up podcast. What's going on, my man?
Just win, maybe.
Oh, boy. So, in Mikey Burns' defense, he was put in the precarious division of representing the Raiders tonight as a Bengals fan. But hey, I regularly bring him on to dig in to stats and subjects with me regarding superlatives for the NFL. And he may have been one of the heartless people that took the comeback player of the year from a dead guy, but I still love him anyway. Mikey Byrne, what's up, buddy?
So we're here to talk Vegas football. If you would have told me that some time ago, I would have said either you're the degenerate or somebody that finally decided to take the loan sharks money.
So first of all, I love the just win maybe. That's cute. But let's get into it, man. First of all, I want the lead to be this. I wish success for Antonio Pierce. This ain't the place. And listen, we had the conversation. We actually recorded it, and it's up now, I believe, last night on the Huddle Up podcast. Bing! About, for me, the Raiders are the most confusing offseason of the group. You have opted to not address quarterback, and you bring in Gardner Minshew. Okay. And then I don't really feel like this defense is all that in a bag of chips beyond Max Crosby. Tell me what I'm getting wrong, Mikey Byrne.
Don't worry, I'll wait.
Well, okay, let's transition to this. If there's
here's the thing. After Max Crosby, this defense wasn't good last year, and it found a way to be competitive down the stretch. And I feel like that's a tip of the cap to Antonio Pierce, because I think he's going to fill this defense full of no-named, bring your hard hat and lunch pail kind of guys. And he's going to get the best out of them, because I think that being a former player, he gets an extra level that some of these other coaches don't get, because it's a lot easier to sit there and say, oh, it's this easy to block the guy in the C gap, or it's this easy to make a tackle on, Tyreek Hill while he's running a 4.2 140 down the middle of the field.
Yes,
sir, it's not that easy. And, coaches sitting there and telling you that it's that easy. Antonio Pierce is someone who can look up and go, hey, okay, it's hard, but let's take this route instead of this route, and let's see if we can kind of cut down on the yardage after the catch and things along those lines. And I think players will want to play for him. So I think that's the thing here. It's not going to be a flashy defense via name per se, but I think it's going to be at least a defense that can keep them in some games. Last year they did. This year I don't think it's going to be much different than that. I just don't know that the offense has the firepower to stay with some of the teams that they have on the docket this year.
Yeah, no, and I mean, listen, we mentioned that it's a hell of a docket. The AFC North is what it is. You got Patrick Mahomes the second twice. You got Justin Herbert twice, and then somewhere in here, you're facing Sean Payton as a rookie head coach. It's not a simple draw, and I didn't even get into any of the other teams on the schedule. Like at some point, you got to take on. I think you're the guys that would be taking on Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. So that's a whole thing. But yeah, you mentioned this defense being flaccid. I mean, losing Josh Jacobs is bad enough. And then you bring in Gardner Minshew. Yeah, you still have Devontae Adams. Yeah, he's going to abuse matchups, as Booga Peters mentioned at the beginning of the show. But what on the offense is more exciting other than anecdotes about throwing a football over a mountain?
So, we talked on last night's episode of Huddle Up that the Brock Bowers pick was questionable at best. I've taken the last 24 hours to sit back and actually digest that pick. And I'm going to say I don't hate it. I'm going to say that here's the deal. You knew that Josh Jacobs was gone. You knew that you didn't address a lot of things to fix that. Alexander Madison is no Josh Jacobs. Let's be very transparent about that. Uncle Rico's going to need to dump the ball off. And why not have two really, really, really good, really, really, really big targets for him to dump the ball off to in Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer, both guys who can make plays after the catch. The way I look at it in this division, and I'm just going to focus on the three other teams in this division, the linebacking core of the Chargers is good, not great.
Mhm.
Kansas City, their front seven is Chris Jones, and it's got a couple of other good pieces, but it isn't the bulk piece anymore. And Denver is Denver. I don't necessarily know that I think that team is going to be any good aside from Patrick Surtain II, but that's fine. So I feel like Minshew is going to be dumping the ball off. And here's the thing. If you're going to scheme up an offense with two tight ends that could be similar to a certain offense run by the Hoodie in New England with Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez, let's not forget, Tom Brady didn't have a ton of great wide receivers during that time. Yes, he had possession receivers, Danny Amendola, the tail end of Wes Welker, but it wasn't like he was like throwing it to Randy Moss and then losing in the Super Bowl with Randy Moss.
That might have even been the rather than the late Wes Welker, I might even call that the early Edelman days, perhaps.
Yeah. And that's probably factual. I don't know my Patriots history enough. I just know that Tom Brady won a lot while he was there. That's all I know.
Being up on a weaker division, much like the Chiefs are now.
Correct. So with that being said, I don't hate the Brock Bowers pick as much as I did last night when we were actually sitting down and digesting it. And I'm just like, man, maybe they should have went in a different direction. But then I started thinking to myself, what was the different direction? Reaching for a quarterback? I think here's the thing. I think if Vegas is going to struggle this year, and I know that their record last year being 8-9 and finishing tied for second in the AFC West, it looks great on paper. Jimmy Garoppolo gone, Brian Hoyer gone, Aiden O'Connell benched. So we're going with Uncle Rico. Okay, but here's the thing. When you look at what's coming out in next year's draft class, Quinn Ewers, Shadur Sanders potentially, some other pieces that may come out. I'm not saying that Shadur Sanders in Las Vegas would be the holy grail.
Oh, I will. It's a fit.
But I think that fits perfect. And
Yeah.
I think that that's something that you might want to think about here. So with that being said, I think Uncle Rico was a stopgap for a year, maybe a year and a half. He did sign a 2-year contract, and maybe this is Shadur Sanders. Maybe this is Quentin Ewers. You know, whoever is the pick whenever they do select. But I think quarterback, where they were picking this year, to move up would cost too much, and there was nothing still there when their pick came up. Now, Michael Penix Jr. still there. Maybe we have another conversation.
This guy
with him going to pick before, I think this is one where I actually say you took the best available player.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I get it. Where they were placed was the issue. Antonio Pierce definitely shot himself in the foot a touch by winning those games towards the end. With that in mind, but that being said, I'm going to say this. I remember Donovan Peoples-Jones getting picked ahead of Michael Crabtree, and then Crabtree holding out because they weren't the Niners weren't about to pay him what Donovan Peoples-Jones was going to get, and it was a whole thing. I might have some of the facts wrong, but the punchline is the Raiders got screwed in similar fashion by another team just making a pick that makes absolutely no sense for proper long-term planning. So yeah, I'm with that. I can make the argument that they were targeting Penix and then had the rug swept out from under them. I can make the argument that the Falcons did it just because they thought another team wanted them that bad, so they wanted to screw somebody else over. Hell, I don't know enough about the about the staff there to know where there might be grudges, but I will say I agree with you about the best pick on the board. I can make the argument that there were some edge rushers maybe that might have been a better plan. If they think they're fine with Crosby, that's fine. I feel like there might be maybe some linebackers that I don't know. They had other options. I'm not up on my draft research as I was at the time because I was not covering the draft that year. I was handling the Magic in the playoffs. Bing! Shouts to the 3-point conversion A7BN Sports. But the check down point you make is It's more than adequate. I think you're pretty much correct in how he'll be employed. You'll see a lot of ace formation. I like it there. Listen,
notable picks after Brock Bowers. The DN from UCLA, Lati Alatu. Byron Murphy the second, the D tackle from Texas.
I did like Byron Murphy coming in. That's a good point.
Dallas Turner, the DN from Alabama. And then maybe Jared Verse from Florida State, from the DN perspective. Otherwise, it was a couple of offensive linemen. Amarius Mims for my Cincinnati Bengals. Chop Robinson went to Miami at 21. But when you look at the guys that went ahead of him, Bo Nix went the pick before, JJ McCarthy at 10. The flashy wide receivers were gone, and Harrison, Neighbors, Adunze. So I don't know. I just feel like this was one of those. Bowers is a piece that you can build around, and I think having the two tight ends, because even if it is Shadur Sanders next year, another tight ends are quarterback's favorite safety valves.
Yes. I mean, what's the guy's name? Fleener had a great career because he was drafted at the same time as Andrew Luck. I get it. So that's a random Stanford duo that I don't think I've brought up in a number of years. Hell, that's 12 years ago now. Let's rub that in a little deeper. Feel the burn, right? Anyways.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I'm glad you brought up Byron Murphy and Jared Verse. So they did upgrade up front, theoretically. I don't know that Verse is the right size for the NFL. We'll find out.
They didn't get Verse. Verse went to the Rams.
Oh, I thought you said
No. I was saying notable picks that were still on the board whenever they drafted Brock Bowers.
Okay, I thought I had that wrong. I was like, I don't remember him going to the Rams.
Yeah,
so they missed on Byron Murphy too, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Okay, that confused me. Sorry about that.
Byron Murphy is probably the only name that I probably would have taken for this team. I think it was a little too early to reach on Verse, where they were at. Maybe if they traded back after all the quarterbacks were gone, maybe if they decided to go with the trade back route and Verse was there at the 20s, maybe then. But I like the Brock Bowers pick because I think it's a safety valve for whomever they draft at quarterback next year.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, good. I'm glad you said it because I'm saying it freaked me out as I say, wait, I don't remember him going there. I've already forgotten Jared Verse went. Okay, good.
Nope.
Okay. I feel better. See, I got to have more confidence in myself, man, when it comes to the draft. That is not my place. I bring in people for that, Anyways, with all that in mind, listen, take me through the pain. What do you see them doing on the schedule?
Well, shout out to former Cincinnati Bengal great coach Marvin Lewis, who is the assistant head coach of this team.
I think that's a great thing that he's there too, by the way.
I mean, this entire coaching staff, when you look at it,
except Philbin.
Yeah, I was going to say Joe Philbin's there. Rob Ryan's there. I think that's a good one. Rob Ryan is a senior defensive assistant. I think that's cool. But looking at the schedule, it's not good. I will go a little different than you here. I do think that they get swept by Kansas City, obviously. I think they sweep Denver.
Interesting.
I just don't like Bo Nix.
Okay.
I just don't think he's going to transition in a Sean Payton offense. I say they split with the LA Chargers. Okay. And I'm going to take the split here.
Charger. I can't front on that.
Well, I'm going to take the split here for a very specific reason. They play them week 1 in LA. I think they lose that game. I think they win week 18 at home because who knows who's going to be left for the Chargers health-wise by the time we get to week 18. The way that this team has been riddled by the injury bug the last couple years, just based off of pure coincidence and things that have happened. Bose is always getting dinged up. Khalil Mack's getting dinged up. Herbert's missed time. Obviously, the running back by committee that they're going to have with the former Baltimore Ravens. Both of those guys have missed substantial time. So I go split with the Chargers. So I have them going, 3-3 in the division. But I don't think either of the Kansas City games are close. I understand that Kansas City sandwich is a Vegas game in between. I think it's San Francisco and maybe Cincinnati or something, but I don't care. It doesn't matter. You could put Carson Wentz and me and you out there, and I think we could probably beat the Raiders right now, especially as questionable as this defense is going to be after Max Crosby.
My knees for that though, but anyways.
So look, just reeling off their schedule. I'm going to go 0-2 to start. Losses at the Chargers and at Baltimore. I think they beat Carolina at home, lose to Cleveland, beat Denver. So we're 2-3 going into week 6. They travel. Oh no, they're home against Pittsburgh. This is one where I feel like this one could go truly either way. I'm going to lean in favor of Oakland here, or excuse me, Las Vegas. 3-3. And then they're going to lose 3 straight at the Rams, Kansas City, Cincinnati prior to the bye week. That takes us to week 10. At that point, 9 weeks in, I have them 3-6. Lose to Miami, 3-7. Beat Denver, 4-7. Lose to Kansas City, 4-8. At Tampa.
Because you're going west to east is why I make
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you. Yeah. So that's 4-9. 4-9. Win at home against Atlanta because it's on Monday night and coupons can't play on Monday night, as we've discussed.
that late in the season. It could still be.
It might be Michael Penix. It might be Michael Penix by then. You're absolutely right.
Yes.
But for what it looks like right now, I'll take the win because coupons can't play in prime time.
So you got 5 wins.
Lose to Jacksonville, even though they're coming west. I still think they lose. They lose to the Jaguars week 16 because I think Jacksonville is going to need that game to keep themselves in playoff contention.
100%. Yeah.
At New Orleans, I mean, this could be Taysom Hill. This could be Derek Carr. This could be anybody. I'll say win that game and then win against the Chargers. I have this as a at most 8-win team. I'm thinking more in the 6 variety.
Interesting.
I really feel like there's 6 good wins there. The Chargers once, the 2 against the Broncos. I think they beat Carolina. I'll give them those 4 for sure. I think Pittsburgh is an option that they could beat at home. So I don't necessarily know that this team is all that deep because life after Josh Jacobs with Zamir White and Alexander Madison is not going to be great. Let's be very transparent about that. But I think that this is a spot where they need to be this questionable so that they know internally, okay, Gardner Minshew's not the answer. Aiden O'Connell's not the answer. It's let's go trade up if we have to get Quinn Ewers or go get Shadur Sanders or whomever the quarterback of the future in Las Vegas is going to be from that perspective. But I think that this is the spot where Vegas almost hits a soft reset because you still have Devontae Adams, who we didn't really talk about a lot because he's just Mr. Utility. He's just always there. Jacoby Myers played pretty well last year for them, catching 10 touchdowns, which not a lot of people had on their bingo scorecard for last season. So the offense is going to be explosive. I think the offense is going to keep them in ball games, even with Uncle Rico throwing it clear over that mountain over there. But I think the defense right now after Max Crosby, and I get it. I started with, I think there's a lot of guys who are not going to be household names when this thing starts, that they're going to pack their lunch. They're going to wear their hard hats. They're going to be ugly and dirty and grimy, and they're going to try to grind out things. But inevitably, I do think that I give the edge here to a 6-win team and probably a team picking in the top 7.
Wow. I listen, from where I sit, there's some optimism there. Like, I'll lead with this. You're playing the NFC South. You're going to get a win out of there. You're going 0-4 against the AFC North. That's just where I sit. I don't see them beating the Browns. I just can't. Everybody else, you think they could beat the Steelers? I don't care how bad their quarterbacks are. If Fitzpatrick and TJ Watt are both on the field, forget about it. Okay. The defense may end up scoring more points. I have them 1-5 in the division. I think they get swept by 2 teams and split with the Broncos. You're assuming the Chargers are going to Charger. I am not holding that against you. I think it is your loathing for Bo Nix where you and I disagree. I think it's just a matter of Peyton out coaching a young and rookie head coach. That's just where I sit. And granted, one could argue it's more likely he's playing chess against Marvin Lewis, who I would argue is one of the most underrated coaches in NFL history. But, I can say that and not be a homer. So we'll leave
Factual.
that. Yeah, facts of the case are those. I don't hear a dispute. Your bonus games intrigue me. I don't think you beat the Rams. I keep saying you as if like I'm so used to the people coming on as analysts.
Actually being fans.
Yeah, that's habit. I mean, no disrespect, Bengal fan. That's not what I mean. But
fine.
I think you're spot on with Jax and the Dolphins both. I mean, flying over to Florida, it's not the weather, it's the jet lag. And if it happened to be, it would be even worse if they had to go to London. I'm just throwing that out there. So, with all that in mind, it's just shouts to Mickey Delaney calling you Just Win Maybe because that's your name handle. What's up? Yeah, you're showing respect to Mikey the Bernier, and I respect that, Mickey. Thanks for jumping in. Listen, I 1-5 in the division, 0-4 against the North, 1-3 against the South, with 1-2 in the remaining games. And that one, of course, I cited
the Carolina Panthers.
No, the Panthers are in the South. I
that's
said
the one when they get in the South.
Yeah,
Okay.
I said earlier that they wouldn't beat the Rams. I actually do think, now that I'm thinking about it, I think they win the Battle of LA there, more because of the dubious health nature. Speaking of injury-prone guys, of one John Matthew Stafford, and by the way, Aaron Charles Donald no longer a factor. I think that's worthy of mention. So yeah, 3-14. But the good news is Shedeur Sanders, baby, boo, Panders for Sanders, humpy bumpy, woo!
So, do you think anybody finishes with a worse record?
I don't, and I might
So
be
you're
giving a spoiler.
So Las Vegas gets the number 1 overall pick.
Well, it depends on some tie breaks. I could be at or above. I haven't done the Broncos yet.
I truly think that it's either them or Carolina.
Yeah, I think, and you say all that. We haven't done the NFC South yet, but let's just say the chances of them getting a number 1 pick before having done my research, I'm not. They're on the board for being at the top of the board, is what I'm trying to say.
Carolina is on the clock.
Yes, yeah, they're on the clock. It depends on what my research renders exactly. Mikey Byrne, man, great thank you so much for coming in a tight spot. I know that's what she said, but yeah, great job. Tell the people where you can be found before I jump over to the Irish NFL show.
You can follow me on Twitter at They Call Me Bern, BERN, the last 4 letters, because my last name is Bernier. You can listen to me talk about wrestling on the Take 3 Wrestling podcast. You can listen to me talk with Kyle on the Huddle Up feed, where we discussed off-season winners or losers last night. Next week, I believe we are filling in for the simulcast for the NFC East.
Correct. You will be once again on a different duty dealing with the Commanders. So that should be fun.
Spoiler alert.
Uh-oh.
Washington is going to have a better record than everybody thinks I'm going to pick them to have.
Ooh, that's not a spoiler. That's a teaser. There's a difference.
So and then we recorded one for the following week where we discuss adding a player to your favorite team. That was a lot of fun. We had fun with that one, especially
baseball.
I mean, even Ernest EJ Christian decided to hop in for a minute there. It was fantastic. Appreciate him hopping in.
Way too fast.
We couldn't understand a word that he said, but we appreciate him stopping by. But as always, I appreciate hanging out with you, Kyle. I appreciate you having me on. I can't wait for a couple weeks where I actually get to sit down and talk Cincinnati Bengal football with you when we do the North. Yeah. So super hyped for that. Super hyped to talk about my guys. But for now, I'll keep changing out the hats and playing the role of armchair and analyst for the student of the game.
Man, listen, first of all, thanks for being part of a good debut episode for previews. The other thing that you'll have in common is I'll have somebody from across the pond for that episode of one. Nicholas Jorgensen of the Gold Clued will be representing the Ravens. I got Drax coming in, Mike Draculus for the Steelers. That'll be fun. And of course, Lamont Broadus will be coming in for the Browns. That's always a great time, as he was put in the awkward position of having to analyze Deshaun Watson. Good gravy.
Mr. Randy Watson.
Hey, listen, I wouldn't want to talk about sexual chocolate around Deshaun Watson. Don't make that mistake. Hey, special guest appearance by Lady Caliente. Anyways, with all that in mind, Mikey Byrne, thanks for jumping aboard. An honor and privilege to talk soon, my man.
Sounds good, brother.
All right. Mikey Byrne doing his thing. A fantastic time. Well, we've gotten all the Americans out of the way. Now we jump across the pond to Colin Cronin from Cork, Ireland, one of the hosts of the Irish NFL show, to talk Denver Broncos. And listen, this right here is going to be a bigger treat than any bit of Irish cheddar you could fight on a charcuterie board. I don't understand that word, charcuterie board. It's all fancy. I just wanted to drink some whiskey with my buddies, but now we have a club with a charcuterie board with Irish cheddar. This was going to be a better pun until I couldn't say charcuterie. But what I can tell you that this guest can say is a whole lot of interesting things about his Denver Broncos from the Irish NFL show. And now the Denver to Dublin, or is it Dublin to Denver? I don't know. I'll make fun of myself later as he corrects me. Colin Cronin from Cork doing the thing. Welcome in, my man.
Thanks very much, Kyle. Always good to chat to you. And you've made me hungry with that intro. I now want a big block of cheddar, and I may go and do that after we are done recording.
Little bit of a pro tip here from a fat guy. Like, I'm not 300 anymore, but I still qualify as a fat guy. For those watch or listening on the podcast, I still have my offensive lineman Aaron Evans' original painting of me on there, certified fat guy. But the whole key to all of that, I don't know if you have Triscuits over there, Cullum, but if you do, make sure you get either the olive oil or the rosemary flavored Triscuits. Goes great with any fancy cheese. I'm just throwing it out there.
They don't sell them over here, Kyle. I am aware of them following my trip stateside, but they don't sell them. But that is sage advice for anyone listening who can access Triscuits. Do that.
Well, and not sage, rosemary. And he tried to call me smart, but I'm too fat to realize it because of food. It's all funny. Here's some food for thought, though. I think what we're looking at in Denver right now is obviously a rebuild. This franchise has told us that, hey, listen, Sean Payton's here for one more year, unless he goes all Urban Meyer, cracks under the pressure, and starts, doing inappropriate things away from the team. No, I don't think that'll happen. But, I mean, the only thing inappropriate I can immediately think of about Sean Payton directly, other than Bounty Gate, would be that movie with Kevin James that's trying to portray. Anyways, enough about that. So in light of everything that's gone on with this offseason, I mean, obviously they're in cap hell trying to offload Russell Carrington Wilson. That's the biggest challenge. I'll start with the easy softball stuff. Bo Nix, their draftee choice. And listen, as critical as I've been of Bo Nix, thinking that Michael Penix is the better quarterback, the Falcons did what they did and took Penix off the board for you, among other quarterbacks. You get Bo Nix. I'm relatively confident in Bo Nix and trying to build him as an NFL product. There's some kind of Brock Purdy vibes of being a guy that finished a college career there. But he obviously, in my opinion, in college was a better quarterback than Brock Purdy with the right coach like Sean Payton alleges to be. I see a future there. What think you of Bo Nix?
I think the Broncos are going to be the team to watch in the NFL for the next 2 years, Kyle. And I say that, right? People are going to go, why? It's not like they have a whole load of talent. It's because Sean Payton has taken on one of the, I would argue, greatest coaching challenges that anyone is going to take on. There is the cap hit. There is the lack of talent. There is the owners that, have just come in, don't seem to want to keep quiet at all, which is interesting in and of itself. There is a GM in place who made enormous mistakes, and now the team go out of their way to keep trying to defend that. They brought in David Shaw from Stanford, and it was a case of the lady doth protest too much when they kept saying this is a George Payton move. It was George's decision. George did it. George basically drove, to all the way to California to pick David up and drive him back to Denver. But I think I say all of that because I really do think this is going to be fascinating when it comes to what the Broncos do, because you look at the roster and it really currently it's not stacked with talent. And you mentioned Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy came in, there weren't expectations, and Brock Purdy came into an absolutely stacked roster. That is not the case that Bo Nix is coming into. And I think Sean Payton and the Broncos and the rest of Broncos country can probably be pretty glad that the Falcons did what they did, or I think there would have been even more focus on it. Now, some of the things that might go in his favor is that, the comments that were made afterwards. I think it was Todd McShay said this is the most arrogant pick he's seen in a draft. And that, is a way for, I suppose, Sean Payton to focus. But Sean Payton has backed himself to rebuild this team. How long does Sean Payton want to give it? How long do the owners want to give it? I do think, this. I will get into this. I don't have huge expectations in terms of wins this year, but I think it is absolutely crucial that Bo Nix looks like he is the real deal and that they can really begin to build on it. Because if not, Kyle, he might not be going anywhere at the end of the 2024 season. But I remember Benjamin Solak on the Ringer podcast back before he went on paternity leave said, and this was way before the draft, and he said he could see Sean Payton doing something crazy like taking Bo Nix at 12, and then if it doesn't work after 2 years, just torching it and walking away because ultimately he has the ring, he has the money. It didn't work out. Oh, well, that was the Broncos' fault. And for that reason, I think that makes the Broncos fascinating. It's like, I don't know if you ever played Sim City. Way back in the day, and you could create scenarios for yourself. So you could build a city, and then you could end up like having an earthquake hit your city and having to rebuild a city, or there were different options. There was also a game, International Superstar Soccer, that allowed you to put yourself in scenarios. So you're down 2-1, there's 13 minutes left, and you've got to win the game. I think Sean Payton finds himself in that situation. He is massively behind the 8 ball, and yet he has got to figure out a way to rebuild this team.
Yeah, I first played SimCity on Super Nintendo, and there was an option to release a kaiju on your city, and that would then Bowser would come out and smash it around. Now, I would argue that this salary cap situation is more intimidating than Bowser would ever be to my city. But no, that's a fine analogy. And listen, he's trying to play his way through it. I get all of that. But for that same reason, the money's committed, so to speak. And that's kind of where I'm coming from, in that I'm pretty sure we'll see Sean Payton at least through the 2025 season. And after that point, though, if they aren't at least a playoff factor in 2025, it's very easy to see that scenario happening. They would, but then at that point, have more of Rusty off the books. They would have a growing quarterback. Theoretically, if Bo Nix is going the right direction, maybe they'll draft somebody. I don't know. I'm doubtful of that. I don't think Bo Nix is going to do that badly. I have way more confidence in him than I do J.J. McCarthy. I still don't know what drugs the Vikings were on, but we'll touch on that more later, I think, this or next month with the NFC North. But yeah, I think we've seen, to the Broncos' credit, they've shown enough to know that they're staying loyal to coach, and for those players that are along for the ride with him. And they'll also have that consistency that first-year quarterbacks don't always find themselves enjoying, right? This is how much better could some quarterbacks have been if they didn't have to change offensive coordinators? I'm reminded of Alex Smith in San Francisco, who went through 6 before eventually getting to, was it Harbaugh or Singletary? I don't know. You can make the argument of who was the better coach for him, obviously, but I think it was 6 leading up to Mike Singletary, or Mike Singletary's staff was the 6th. I forget which. The point is, with this Sean Payton thing there, a good positivity will be Bo Nix. I'm pretty confident he'll have a year 2 coaching staff that can help his development, and I think that's a big deal for any young player. You mentioned this lack of a stacked roster. I get that. But in this rebuild year beyond Bo Nix, what's something that people should look forward to seeing when the Broncos take the field?
That isn't Pat Surtain.
Hey, listen, I'm half surprised he's still there. Let's be honest. I was thinking they were going to deal him.
Yeah, he is obviously the blue chip player, and what you're saying about Knicks, I agree. I think Knicks will be fine. I am fascinated by JJ McCarthy. I do think that's an interesting one. I don't know if we've seen a QB be as divisive. I've seen plenty of people who think he's going to be very, very good. So I'm intrigued on that one. But Bo Nix, I think he's fine, but can he be more than fine? Remember, he's in a division with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, and because the rest of it, between the Broncos and the Chargers and the Raiders, the Chiefs haven't had a whole lot to worry about. I will say, in terms of offense, if people are probably looking for something to get excited about, I think Audric Estime, the draft pick coming out of Notre Dame, he is a real workhorse. He's also wickedly entertaining. I've had the good fortune to meet him and interview him in Dublin. Notre Dame played over here. He came over as part of kind of a scouting party, and he was over for the game. He scored a touchdown. He did an Irish jig. I would not be at all surprised, Kyle, if he was to become the workhorse. Maybe not straight away, because they're going to want to see how Javonte Williams does. It's a shame. I think Javonte Williams is a really talented back who unfortunately got a crippling knee injury. And I don't know if we'll ever get to see him be the same sort of player that he was. So I think keep an eye on Estime, because he could be take Williams' spot and become the workhorse for the Broncos in the backfield.
Yeah, well. Hey, first of all, I cite the great advantage it is to talk to you. Like, you may be the Irish NFL show, but the exposure that your crew has to college football by way of teams, typically the Irish, such as they are, obviously the Fighting Irish, Notre Dame. Who I have to talk about with way too much on the Huddle Up podcast. Bing! But, Jim has decided, because he's a Michigan fan now because his wife's team won a national championship. That's fine. I still got to worry about Matt. But that exposure to the college piece there is really cool that you guys have that access. It lets me ask about guys in their college life, like Bo Nix, like who you just mentioned further down. And I say all of the above to say I'm not confident in a team whose biggest hype is a corner, right? And typically, like, if you're talking about, but Kyle, what about Sauce Gardner and the Jets? The thing is, when you talk about Sauce Gardner as a rookie, it was like, oh, Sauce Gardner is going to be great. And he has a good defensive front, so he won't have to cover that long. That's kind of always how they talk about that. With the Broncos, listen, Khalil Mack isn't walking through that door anymore. And if he were, he'd need a walker. That's part of why the Chargers are going to be a little bit more of an easy out defensively, because all the money tied to him and the other Bosa. The Bosa that's not Nick. See what I did there? But it's a tough place for the group to be defensively. And then you mentioned earlier Patrick LaVon Mahomes II with the Chiefs. The comparison I draw is the Patriots and the AFC East, where they were regularly winning the East. Half of it was because there was limited competition. Now I know, but Kyle, the Chargers have Justin Herbert. Okay, I understand that. Maybe it's not quite as much as the powder puff as the alleged GOAT, who's not the GOAT, I said it, had to go through, in the AFC East back in that day. But, I mean, if you had the magic wand, Cullum, what's the one thing you'd wave? You're allowed one wish and not more wishes, all this other stuff. How do you make the Broncos better? What's the move you think that could make the biggest impact?
The pass rush for right now, and that's being realistic, in terms of what we need. This is a team that has struggled ever since Super Bowl 50. I mean, a team that was essentially the defense carried that offense, and Peyton Manning still had the leadership, but he didn't have the physical gifts. But the Broncos have struggled ever since. They were never able to get Von Miller and Bradley Chubb on the field together. And last year, Zach Allen was decent. And we saw, I suppose, signs of life from some of the edge guys, but to have somebody that could make a real difference. And I do think that the NFL has moved, as you talked about there, Kyle, to you can't be a lockdown corner anymore. The way in which the game has gone, you're going to get burned at some point. Everybody. There is not a single solitary cornerback who hasn't been burned at some point, just because of the way the game is played now. But you look at there's a reason the Chiefs kept Chris Jones and they left Snead walk ultimately. You have to have a pass rush. You have to have somebody who makes the opposing QB really worry when they're on the field. And to me, I think, we need to see what Bo Nix is. I mean, if you put Justin Jefferson with the Broncos right now, we don't know what that would really look like. Justin Jefferson is an amazing player. He's absolutely fantastic. But would that one receiver really make the difference? Because you look at it, and the Broncos have holes. They don't have enough. They've Cortland Sutton, who is capable of magical catches. But, is that enough? Josh Reynolds was fine as a number 2 in Detroit, but he's a bit of a workhorse. Marvin Mims, he had some special teams moments, but Jerry Jeudy was, they talked about consistently that he was going to have the breakout year. He never had the breakout year, and yet Mims couldn't get any work, even though Jerry Jeudy was losing his mind at times last year. And I just think for that reason, for me, the pass rush is something the Broncos really miss. And the other part that worries me, Kyle, I'll be honest, and where I go back to why I think it's such a challenge for Sean Payton, is that you're now beginning to see the fact that the Broncos didn't have those first round picks for the last few years because of the trade for Russell Wilson, because of the trade for Sean Payton. Mm-hmm. And you should be having, those kind of blue chip guys who are making a difference. The Broncos don't have that on outside of Pat Surtain on either side of the ball. So it will be really interesting. And they hit a bit of a purple patch at times last year, where, after a really terrible start, the defense kind of came alive, but then the defense really fell off. And can you really trust Vance Joseph? Is there anyone out there from any of the teams that he's been at that says, oh yeah, this is the guy who can turn a defense around? Again, you look at the Chiefs, and it's funny kind of looking at the Chiefs because they're just so good in so many places. Mahomes is incredible. Andy Reid is incredible, but their defensive coordinator Spags is absolutely unbelievable. And I was fortunate. I had the good fortune to get to know Brendan Daly over the last few years, a man who's been to 8 Super Bowls. He's 6 Super Bowl rings, 3 with the Patriots, 3 with the Chiefs. He was actually here in Dublin last weekend. That's a guy who won 4 Super Bowl rings, Kyle, coaching the D-line, and then said, I want a new challenge, and Andy Reid and Spags were smart enough to go, let's work with you, Brendan. And now he's coaching their linebackers. That's the type of people the Chiefs employ, right? Winners who don't want to rest on their laurels, who want to try new things, who want to try and improve. And that's what the Broncos are up against. And I just don't think that Vance Joseph is the answer there. Sean Payton is obviously a wonderful offensive mind. He is going to have to make magic happen. He is going to have to, card tricks, rabbit tricks, sawing people in half to make them double. All the magic tricks are going to have to come out. This is, and the worry is he ends up more Joe Bluth than David Copperfield.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that threat, but let's also remember this is a guy that got productivity out of Teddy Bridgewater, which the Broncos weren't able to do when he was there for that time. So there's plenty to be said for that. Just to come up with an egg, I mention that because there are little things out there that happen that make me think draw a talent to a team. First example. I'll go to Jacksonville first, right? The first year I covered the Jags in the press box, Urban Meyer, all that. The Cardinals came to town, and Shaquille Griffin held down Larry Fitzgerald. I was incredibly impressed. You know who went off that day? The Jags' current number 1 receiver, Christian Kirk. It's no coincidence, in my opinion, that the next year Kirk's wearing teal. I even asked him about it. I said, hey, do you think that was part of it? It was probably a factor, he said in his very coy professional delivery, as he tends to do, But I think I mentioned all that to say that Bridgewater example, somebody noticed that in that front office, and over and above Peyton's majesty out there in the ether, so to speak. I feel like that was a factor in his acquisition. And listen, it was the Super Bowl in Phoenix when he was first acquired. The way his reputation stands is for itself. Coach Andy Reid himself said the league is better when Sean Payton is coaching, end quote. So, to see potential for it to go really well or not, I think is what corroborates your statement of in the next 2 years, they're going to be fun to watch. I certainly can't front on that. Well, Cullum, it's crunch time. It's magic time. It's the time we've all been waiting for. Walk me how you think they're going to do this season with the prediction, please.
My hope, Kyle, is that we all want our team to win the Super Bowl, but I'm going to be very realistic. I think the Broncos could have a worse record this year, but things could be looking much better by January of 2025. This year is all about Bo Nix. It's all about, does Bo Nix look like he is the guy? And none of the quarterbacks that have come in since Peyton Manning have looked like the guy, not even close to it. I think the Broncos ended up, last year, probably ultimately their record flattered that team a little bit. I think if the Broncos got, I'll be honest, 6 or 7 wins, that's what, when I look at the schedule, I see 6 or 7 wins. Like, you start on the road to Seattle. That's not an easy one. You got a revenge game against Russell Wilson as your home opener.
From the Russell Wilson, by the way, that had revenge stolen from him by Nathaniel Hackett. Speaking of revenge games, Nathaniel Hackett's on this humpy bumpy too. I think Rusty's going to be extra pissed for that Steelers.
As is the trip to New Orleans for Sean Payton.
Facts.
So
yep.
It's an interesting schedule. Keep an eye on the Broncos. It's going to be quite the couple of years.
Which revenge game is the highest percentage for a W? The Saints, the Jets, or the Steelers?
The Jets.
I would have said the Saints. Okay. Because I'll put it this way. depending on Aaron Charles Rodgers' status, I'm going to say the Saints. But I listen. But this is how stupid the Jets are. I haven't had a chance to say this to you personally yet, so I'm taking this opportunity. I'm hijacking my own show for a second here, Colum. Okay, the fact that the Jets came to town and beat the mess that he made in Denver that they're still trying to clean up, and they hand him the damn game ball. What was this? Is he like a double agent? Are you rewarding sabotage? You think he had anything to do with the Jets actually beating the Denver Broncos as a Jet? Oh, hell no. That win was already accounted for before he set foot one in East Rutherford, New Jersey. I'm just saying, Colum. Do you agree with that statement? That's all I'm asking.
Oh, 100%.
Man, listen. I think I've been waiting for a while to ask you that question here on the recording. So I think let me check that off. So
we could do 25 minutes. We could do an hour and 25 minutes. We 2 hours and 25 minutes on Nathaniel Hackett's tenure in Denver, and it wouldn't come close to it. It's incredible. It was so short, but it was somehow. I think in the fullness of time, it didn't get the headlines that Urban Meyer's tenure in Jacksonville did. I think it ultimately, longer term, it did more damage.
Well, it also didn't involve, shall we say, lewd and lascivious activity. That always gets more headlines, especially here in the States. So we'll leave that at that. But, listen, man, I hear where you're coming from. That actually could be a hell of a pod one time. You and I talking about having, I want to call it a debate show, but a smarter conversation about who had a worse long-term impact on their football team. I like all of that. That's an interesting conversation. Like, just in the space that we've been talking about it, my head in the back is having the debate with itself. And it's declared different winners at least 3 times already. Well, but he did this. Well, but then he ruined Trevor. But then he brought Rusty, pushed Rusty out. It's a whole thing, man. Gracious, Colum. I hear where you're going with 6 wins, and that's nice. I got 4. Granted, one of them is that revenge game I'm talking about with the Saints. But again, if Aaron Charles Rodgers is hurt, if it were later in the year, like I have the Jags winning in week 15 because I think there's no way Rodgers is healthy. It being week 4, I think he'll last past game 4 and get hurt in game 5 because then he lasted 4 snaps and then he'll last 4 games, or maybe he'll get hurt against the Broncos. I don't know. But the punchline is I'm a bit infinitesimal amount more confident in the Jets this year than last. And of course, then they also open with the 49ers. So who knows what's going to happen there. But listen, I think one thing we will agree on, though, is that the real story is next year. And provided Sean Payton doesn't cause another locker room rift because of the way he treats a player, a la what happened with Rusty and him, and about the contract stuff and the money and all that, and playing him versus not, and all. I really think if Rusty were more likable, air quotes, among his player brethren, that could have got a lot worse, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I don't think it's funny. We've got glimpses into the Russell Wilson stuff. We haven't got everything. I mean, there. I don't know if people listening, watching, are aware. It's out there, but at the Broncos for 2 years, players were not supposed to play future, and the defense used to taunt Russell Wilson by playing future. That's how bad things got. But it's kind of crazy when your superstar QB is, saying, that you can't play. And I get it. There's history between the two, but it just is, you are supposed to be the leader of men. This is your team. And, that's how petty you're coming across, that they can't play that music, that's going to have an impact on you. I mean, what kind of message does that send? What's Chris Jones? What kind of impact is Chris Jones there for going to have on you? it's all kind of it's still a little bit smoke and mirrors. It probably won't be until Russ is out of the league, Pete is now out of the league, maybe then we'll begin to get the full, because I think there's a whole story on what happened with the Broncos and Aaron Rodgers and how they managed to get end up, because it fell apart with Rodgers and immediately it was Russell Wilson. There's all sorts there, Kyle.
I mean, I'm looking forward to the 30 for 30 on that. I hear you. That's great stuff. No, it's a good point. By the way, for all of those of you out there who didn't learn the lesson, like Russell Carrington Wilson should have well before his NFL career, if you want the defense to not do something, I'm going to tell you the one thing: the Barbra Streisand effect is real. If a quarterback says, "Hey guys, don't do this," the defense is going to do it. Just be ready, okay? Like the public service announcement for all y'all out there. As a man who, protected quarterbacks, this is me protecting other quarterbacks out there in the world, right? Anyways, my good friend Cullum, great for coming in. Tell the world where you can be found, my guy.
Thanks, Kyle. I always enjoy chatting with you. You can find me across social media at Cullum from Cork, and check out the Irish NFL show, and also if there are Broncos fans listening out there in the world, you can check out the Dublin to Denver podcast.
Dublin to Denver. I love that name. That's almost as cool as Cullum from Cork, the wine podcast you're going to do once you retire that we've talked about. Yes, that's going to be great.
I'm getting my practice in for that right now.
There you go. That's my guy right there. Real quick before I sign you off, I feel like I noticed it earlier, but I've just remembered to draw attention to it. For those of you that are listening on the pod, please go to Huddle Up or Sertopa Media YouTube channel, get a hold of your life, and look at this video here, because my guy talking about Peyton Manning on the wall has a Cowboys jersey, and you might ask why. That's the dude that Peyton Manning faked out on that infamous run. That what was it? That I guess you would call that a play action run that Manning did to the outside. I see what you did there, Cullum. You're sneaky, but I'm a student of the game. I saw it. So no, I had to draw that its attention because it's clever. But yes, thank you for coming in. Thank you also to Booga Peters. Thank you also to Brian Paul. Thank you also to Mike the Bernier for substituting in as a Raiders fan, because I didn't get messages back from any of the ones I reached out to. But that's their problem. We've completed the AFC West preview. Of course, I'm Kyle Nash, the student of the game. You can find me on Twitter, Threads, and Instagram at the SOTT. Find me on Facebook as the student of the game. Check out my writings with Jaguars on SI and the Black and Gold Banneret, as well as the Night Shift podcast connected to the Black and Gold Banneret. Watch for that action covering UCF sports. And then also my work with the Duval Dive, 11 a.m. Fridays with my guy, Travis D. Holmes of Big Cat Country. And my work with the 3-point conversion at some point here soon, covering the Orlando Magic. What they've done getting Contavious Caldwell-Pope is kind of a big deal. No offense to any other Denver people listening to that might hurt you more than it helps the Magic. So condolences, but I'm going to have fun covering them. I'm making it selfish now. Anyways, an honor, joy, and privilege to have everybody aboard. But until next time, everyone, class dismiss. And remember, next week, the Huddle Up podcast crew, while I'm traveling, will do the NFC East. So while I won't be here, they will be there covering the NFC East. So look out for that next week. Class dismissed.